Is just after 6 and we do have a quorum.
All right, let's go ahead and get started then. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the City of Tucson Planning Commission. My name is Anna Cassidy and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. The responsibilities of this body are to advise the mayor and council and the Planning and Development Services Department on the adoption of long-range plans, policies, specific plans, and regulations that affect land use and development. Will staff call the roll, please?
Certainly. Chair Cassidy,
Here.
Vice Chair Willett, absent. Commissioner Ziegler,
Here.
Ziegler. I apologize. Thank you. Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Pafford.
Here.
Commissioner Young.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz-Pino. Absent. Commissioner Schwartz.
Here.
Commissioner Hurakit.
Here.
Commissioner Lane. Absent. Commissioner McCansey.
Present.
Commissioner Kinney.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is approval of the legal action report for March 15th, 2023. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the legal action report from March 15th, 2023.
Motion to approve the legal action.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I saw the motion from Commissioner Ziegler and a second from Commissioner McKenzie. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the legal action report for March 15th, 2023, say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, that passed unanimously. Agenda item number 3 is the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan Update. Would staff please present the item number 3, the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan Update?
Yes, good evening. I'm going to share my screen. Just everyone let me know when you can see it. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
This is again about the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan Update. My name is Lena Perrell. I'm a lead planner with Planning Development Services. Just going to briefly walk through some of this information. A lot of this is the same information that we provided at the study session last month. So again, just to go over, the plan update started in 2019. The Sam Hughes Neighborhood Association formed a plan update committee to update the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan following a plan assessment. The committee undertook a more detailed assessment of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan to determine areas of focus for the update and had various outreach opportunities for Sam Hughes residents to provide their input. Some of the members of the steering committee are here this evening. Gail Hartman, who is the chair of that committee, will be speaking after I present to talk a little bit more about the outreach process and the timeline of the update. Again, Mayor and Council direction. So Mayor and Council initiated the update of the neighborhood plan on September 28th, 2021 at the request of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Association. The reason for the update, so the neighborhood's objective was to address goals and policies that have been met and to maintain or update policies and goals that are relevant to current conditions and concerns. The latter are primarily focused on land use and transportation, whose goals and policies are looked at closely by city staff and land use processes. Some background on the plan. On the current plan, the Mayor and Council updated the original Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan on September 16th, 1985, and it has been amended twice. The organization of the plan, so it's in 3 parts. Part 1 is the neighborhood plan, part 2, neighborhood history, part 3, overview of the 1985 plan with the details of the goals that have been met. And it's just a note that part 1 of the neighborhood plan is the section of the plan that the city uses for land use decisions. The major updates to the neighborhood plan include updated goals and policies in the plan's transportation section. Again, as I stated before, that many of the goals in the transportation section had been completed or needed to be updated in response to completed or current transportation projects and neighborhood priorities. A new section about the neighborhood's relationship with the University of Arizona. This section has been added primarily to provide the neighborhood guidance in working with the university. An update to the land use section to include the Sunshine Mile Urban Overlay District. This urban overlay district was adopted by Mayor and Council in September of 2021 and encompasses a section of Sam Hughes along Broadway and a future land use concept map to replace the current office commercial development concept map. And here are the future land use concept map and with the current zoning map. Again, the future land use concept map has been created to follow current land use patterns in the neighborhood for office, commercial, mixed use, multifamily residential, and single family residential uses. The future land use concept map also includes the Sunshine Mile Urban Overlay District, including the mid-century subdistrict. And these are some of the definitions that go along with those land use designations on the future land use map. That provides some additional clarity and context on allowable future uses and links to the Unified Development Code standards that provide allowable standards, including heights and densities. Just one update since the study session last month. Following the study session, members of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Steering Committee requested that the plan provide additional details about the Sunshine Mile Urban Overlay District, specifically the mid-century subdistrict restricted uses. So land use policy 2G has been updated to just provide a little bit more specificity regarding the restricted use area and a more precise citation to the full Sunshine Mile document. So the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan update is consistent with policy direction in both Plan Tucson and the University Area Plan. It allows for consistency with current city initiatives, projects, and land use tools, and helps provide more clarity in land use decisions when dealing with rezoning, special exception, and variance cases. And I'm going to pass it over to Gail Hartman, again, the chair of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan Update Committee, who will just talk a little bit more about that plan update timeline and the public outreach that they did.
Now can you hear me? Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, somehow I got. Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Gail Hartman, and I'm the chair of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan Committee. We have a 7-person committee, some of whom are here tonight. They are Karima Sleeman, Mark Fink, Madeline Cook, Meredith Alvarado, Mary Flipson, and Marie Yonkers. And we also have a 9-person neighborhood board, and I believe some of those folks are with us this evening as well. I'm just going to give a little brief summary of kind of how we got here. As Lena said, we had a neighborhood plan that was done in 1985, and it was actually a very good plan. Much of what it had recommended had actually been accomplished, especially in transportation issues, but times have changed, and it was clearly time for a new plan. We began at our neighborhood annual meeting in January of 2019, when Jim Head, who was our neighborhood president at the time, suggested we should do a plan update. So we formed a committee and got to work. Then, of course, some things happened. COVID happened. It slowed everything down, for at least a year or more. And then, because the southern edge of our neighborhood is Broadway, we worked for about a year with Rio Nuevo folks addressing issues in the Sunshine Mile, as Lena mentioned. And then Councilmember Kozaczek, got the process started officially. And since then, we've had 4 public meetings to learn what the neighborhood was most interested in and what recommendations people had. 2 were at the Himmel Library when we first started, and 2 are at our annual meetings. We've had a lot of interaction with the city planning staff who have been very, very helpful. We worked especially with Rebecca Roop, Lena Perel, and also with Corin Manning. And of course, the staff from other departments, historic preservation, transportation, et cetera, Parks and Rec, so forth. We're very pleased with how the plan ultimately turned out. As with most neighborhoods in Tucson, we're proud of our neighborhood and we want it to remain a good place to live. As Lena mentioned, the focus of the plan is, as you might expect, land use and transportation issues. And I'm not going to go through these in any detail. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. The neighborhood is bounded by 4 major arterials: Campbell, Speedway, Country Club, and Broadway. These streets are highly commercial. So we want to be sure that the commercial along those streets doesn't have negative impacts on the houses that are, right across the alleys. And then in the case of Broadway, which is within the Sunshine Mile area, we did work out a plan with Rio Nuevo to, we hope, keep the buildings that are there. I'm sorry, that's my telephone, and we're just going to have to let it ring. Keep the buildings that are there intact. For example, there are churches there and there's a synagogue, and we would like to see those buildings remain and be used for other purposes rather than being torn down. So that's a couple of land use examples in the transportation and mobility section. Some obvious things, like we were recommending more bus stops with shade, especially along 6th Street and Broadway. We're an old neighborhood, so we have very patchy sidewalks, recommending hopefully more complete sidewalks in certain areas. We did an inventory of all the sidewalks, where they exist and where they don't exist. And we have prioritized where we would like to see sidewalks go in. Now, because we're close to the university, we have parking restrictions on some of our streets, and we, the neighbors, have to pay to park in front of our houses. But the result of that is that there is some money that becomes available for such things as new sidewalks. We were supporting new bicycle routes through the neighborhood. And then, as Lena mentioned, there's 2 other sections. We wrote a little history of the neighborhood because it's been around a long time, and we thought the history would be of interest, particularly to residents and probably to city planners as well. And then we included a short summary of the 1985 plan showing what had been accomplished. So in conclusion, it was clear we felt that an updated plan was needed, and we've received a lot of neighborhood input, and we hope we will receive your support. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. And that kind of concludes our presentation portion. I think we are ready to move into the public hearing.
Okay, I will go ahead and open this up now for any questions from the commission, of staff, or the applicant regarding the information that's been presented. Any questions from the commission? Okay, hearing no questions at this time, I would like to open the public hearing to members of the public who'd like to speak about the item.
I raised my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Go ahead, Commissioner McKenzie, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just had one question for Gail on the report, which I reviewed in some detail today. There's on section part 1 -B-1 number 10 about avoiding the universal development code conflicts or something. I was just curious if that was are there specific SHNP policies that may violate or contradict UDC? And if so, would they be listed? Or is that just a general sort of statement that where that might occur, you would like the plan policies to take precedence?
I think that's a very standard kind of boilerplate sentence, to be honest with you. And I think it would be better for Alina to reply to that.
Yes, so I think the part that you might have been referring to was just that if there was any difference between plan policies and the UDC, that the UDC would take precedent, as that is our code.
Okay, so it's just a general
Yep.
statement. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, I don't hear any questions and I don't see any hands. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing to members of the public who'd like to speak about this item. In general, there's a 3 to 5 minute time limit per speaker, which may be extended at the discretion of the chair. Members of the commission may ask questions of the speakers, but we do ask that each speaker be timely, as we want to make sure that those who'd like to be heard have an opportunity. Dan, how many people have turned in a speaker card requested to speak today?
Chair Cassidy, we haven't had any who have requested yet, but it does appear there at least one person who would like to speak.
All right, so nobody requested ahead of time. I do see a hand up with Melvin Cohen. If you'd like to go ahead and speak, you may do so.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Sam Hughes on Norris, and I'm also very interested in community transit. So looking at Broadway, typically when you develop transportation that's efficient along a road like Broadway, you then hope to add multifamily, more dense population, more dense living. As you've looked at the plan, are there any, is there any planning to improve the density along Broadway or anywhere within the neighborhood, more multifamily living? Because that's what if you're going to have an effective transportation system, you need to be able to support it by more dense living. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else who would like to speak? You can either raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up. All right, seeing no movement to speak, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kinney. Do we need to do a vote to close the public hearing or just the motions? The vote? Yes, I'm seeing heads nodding. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. I'd like to open this up to general discussion by the commission.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I was wondering, could one of us try to respond to Mr. Cohen's comment about housing?
staff, is there any issue with the neighborhood going ahead and speaking now that the public hearing has been closed?
I think that would be fine, since the neighborhood is also acting in partnership with the city on this as a city initiated initiative.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
This is Mark Fink. Hello to those of you who I served on the commission in years past. Nice to see you again. In relation to Mr. Cohen's concerns, certainly along Broadway, the whole purpose of the Sunshine Mile Overlay District was to increase density along Broadway, in some places very considerably. So that has been taken into account, as well as the existing zoning along Broadway would also allow for various higher density projects. The same is true along Speedway. And then there is scattered R2 zoning, which could allow townhouse development up to 15 residents per acre in other parts of the neighborhood. So I think we agree with his point of view, and we think his concerns have been addressed. That's it.
Is there any further discussion from the commission on this item? With the completion of the discussion, I'm going to open this up for a motion to vote on a recommendation of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan update to mayor and council. May I have a motion for a vote to recommend the proposed Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan update to mayor and council?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the Sam Hughes. Oh, I don't have it listed. Of this item to mayor and council. Update to the
Second.
Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan to mayor and council with the recommendation to approve the update. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I heard a motion from Commissioner Martin and a second from Commissioner Young. All those in favor of recommending this item to mayor and council say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, that motion passed unanimously. A favorable recommendation of the Sam Hughes Neighborhood Plan update from the Planning Commission will be sent to the mayor and council. Well, I'll call for item number 4 now. Would staff,
Right. Good job.
Thank you.
would staff please provide the presentation for item number 4, prohibition of ornamental turf UDC amendment?
Well, Stephanie, let me share my screen real quickly. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Commission. Appreciate you having us. So item number 4 is the prohibition of ornamental turf UDC amendment. This is a public hearing. So we went over this last time, but mayor and council direction for this really began at the October 18th, 2022 mayor and council, where they directed us to move forward with a handful of code amendments related to water conservation. This is a list of the ones that were discussed at that meeting, and they're really kind of in order from short-term to long-term, with prohibition of ornamental turf, requirement for water sense fixtures, and the requirement for separate meters for outdoor irrigation being the more immediate items that we're looking at right now. And then we will, be working on low impact development standards and net zero water and some of those other larger projects as we move forward. Just to let you know that the prohibition of ornamental turf is the only one of these that really touches on the Unified Development Code. Requirement for water sense fixtures is a building code amendment. So that's being reviewed by the Consolidated Joint Code Committee, Pima County and Tucson. And then the requirement for separate meters for outdoor irrigation is actually in the Tucson Water Code. So that will be reviewed by their advisory board and changed in their code as well. After that meeting, staff requested mayor and council requested staff to come back 90 days with research and proposal. We did so on February 22nd for ornamental turf. And they gave us additional direction to continue with the formal amendment process for this proposal to prohibit, they said non-functional turf at the time. It is kind of morphed into ornamental turf, which is pretty much the same thing, in a new residential and commercial development. There was direction as well to look at existing ornamental turf. That is a bit of a longer term project and something that Tucson Water is working on. It's something where they'll be looking at both incentives as well as maybe eventually some regulatory ways to transition to that ornamental turf or desert landscapes. We have conducted a bit of outreach related to this and done some outreach. Back in January, we held a series of meetings. We presented this to some development groups, considering a lot of this is going to be related to development. At the Tucson Development Center Stakeholder Luncheon, we met with the Conservation and Education Subcommittee of the Citizen Water Advisory Committee, otherwise known as CWAC. We went and met with the Metropolitan Penal Alliance MPA Public Policy Committee on January 24th. And then on February 1st, 2023, we held a kind of water stakeholder committee. So this was the Water Conservation Code Amendment stakeholder meeting, and it was online public, and we sent it out to a large number of interested people. Through the process, we have received mostly positive kind of sentiment to this, and have kind of realized that it's not really entirely used as far as ornamental turf. There's not a lot of it, but it's a good thing to go through and tighten it up at this point. So what's in front of you is prohibition of ornamental turf. Our turf regulations are located in section 7.6.4 of our Unified Development Code. It's tied to this thing called the Oasis Allowance. This is a bit of a remnant from older development, but when you have common areas, it would allow for other types of plants other than desert plants in order to potentially add for more shade or turf areas. So we're working within that parameter. And then basically what we're looking at doing here is utilizing a development that's really for non-functional turf, we're calling ornamental turf, from the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. So it's consistent with what we're seeing in the rest of the state. So they came up with this definition, and it's one that, you know, there's many members. I think there's like 12 municipalities in the Maricopa County that are all members of that, and one that would guide kind of that definition as we move forward in the state. One thing I did want to point out is because this non-functioning turf, I know this was a little bit of a something that we wanted to clarify a little more as of last time. Ornamental turf really is the same thing as non-functioning turf. It was one of those decisions that we made because just as far as kind of initially understanding what it is, ornamental turf seemed to be something that was a little easier to understand kind of without prior knowledge. And that was part of the reason why we are calling it ornamental turf versus non-functioning turf. So this right here is the draft language from AMLA for that we've taken. It's basically to prohibit that installation of turf grass areas in commercial, industrial, and institutional developments, and common areas of residential developments. And then there's a set of criteria. Some are dimensional criteria, and then they talk about kind of active or programmed recreational uses as well. And so it has to meet all of these criteria. It has to, if it meets any of these criteria, it would not, it would classify as ornamental turf essentially. We did a review of that Oasis allowance, which I talked about earlier. We reviewed 50 plus commercial and multifamily projects over the last several years. And the Oasis allowance, none were found that actually had utilized that. So it isn't really being used, but we again want to close up that loophole related to this, so future development can't potentially utilize that. Yeah. So just to kind of talk a little bit about what is ornamental turf. So it's turf that is not functional. It must meet specific standards, so those dimensional standards, and be used for active recreation. And then what is active recreation? And these are things such as leisure activities that are usually performed with others, often requiring equipment and taking place at prescribed places, sites, or fields. And it includes, but not limited to, things such as tennis or court games, baseball or field games, golf, playground activities, dog parks, things of that sort. We did remove the portion that said swimming pools on here because it is related to turf per the direction of Planning Commission at the last meeting. On the left here is an example of that ornamental turf. Again, not really providing much of a function. It's really on the landscape border. Also, the sprinklers are missing quite a bit of that ornamental turf and watering the rocks, sidewalk, and some of the additional gravel that's out there. This is an example of turf used for active recreation. And this is just kind of, a play field, ball field, that type of thing for people to enjoy, and really common areas such as that. So the draft amendments in front of you is to add AMLA's definition of ornamental turf to section 7.6.4.d, use of turf. Add a restriction that only 50% of the Oasis area may be utilized for turf. And then add definitions of active recreation to 11.4.2 definitions. And with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve a motion to recommend approval of the prohibition of ornamental turf UDC amendment to mayor and council. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. I'll open up the meeting now to any questions from the commission of staff related to the information presented. Any questions? I'm not hearing any voices. I don't see any hands raised.
My hand's up.
There it is.
I put it
Commissioner
up,
Martin,
but
go
it
ahead.
somehow went down by itself. I don't know.
You're clapping again. That's why.
Oh, okay. So Dan, I thought D2D is, I'm not sure what it means. Do you know what it means?
Hold on one second. Let me pull it up so I can take a look at it. D2D. Grass areas installed closer than 10 feet to a street or in front of entryways to residential neighborhoods or subdivisions where recreation amenities don't exist. So ultimately, this would be like that landscape border, right? So that's closer than 10 feet to the street. And it is kind of in front of the entryway. So it's to get rid of those kind of, just kind of random landscape borders of turf that are no longer, that, aren't really being used for much other than visual aspect.
So does it mean that if it's associated with recreational amenities, you can have it, or?
That is correct. Yeah. So if it does, if it is associated with recreation amenities and it is being utilized for active recreational purposes, it would be allowed. But again, it has to, if it doesn't meet those criteria.
It just seems like saying unless associated with recreational amenities instead of where they do not exist might be a little clearer, but.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make a recommendation to update that, this is, again, we're trying to be consistent with the language that was developed by AMLA, and that's why we have what we have here, but we have made a couple minor changes to it, so.
It's hard to know what the intent was. I think I figured it out, but. And then on 3, can you explain that one too?
Sure. So this is actually a kind of based on feedback from the commission that having functional in there was a little I guess, confusing. So instead of it saying turf areas that are functional, we tried to get rid of the functional, non-functional portion. It basically says if it doesn't meet the criteria in 764D2, which is that list that's there, that you would be able to have those turf areas in your oasis area. So basically it's guided by the oasis, and then you could have that turf, which is basically active recreation. But it would have to meet the dimensional standards and everything else that we have.
So I'd recommend that after criteria you add for ornamental turf, just to make it clearer.
Yes, that we are happy to make that adjustment. Thank you.
Those are my only comments.
Are there any other questions from the commission? No more hands. Okay, staff, do we have any speakers signed up today? No? All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing to members of the public who'd like to speak about this item to the commission. In general, there's a 3 to 5 minute time limit per speaker. Members of the commission may ask questions of the speakers, but we do ask that each speaker be timely to make sure that those who would like to be heard have an opportunity. We haven't had anybody sign up to request to speak ahead of time, so I will open up the floor. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up.
Yes, this is, if I may, Ben Bueller Garcia on behalf of the Arizona Multi-Housing Association.
Yes, go ahead.
My question is, who will be the ultimate determining body as to what constitutes a recreational activity versus not? So to use a more very extreme example, if I lay down some turf at the entryway to my development and I put in some cups and flags and claim it's a putting green, would that be legal? And who would determine that?
Staff, is there someone who can answer the question?
Yes, Chair Cassidy, that would be just like all other zoning determinations, it would be first staff upon review of a plan to determine whether it meets our definition in the code. And if there's any, discrepancy or question, that could go to our zoning administrator if there's a request for a determination. So we have several ways that we can interpret the code on that as requested and on a case-by-case basis. But it would be interpreted the same way we interpret all other sections of our code.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Martin, I saw your hand go up. Did you have a comment or question?
Well, I think grass isn't allowed in street landscape borders by 764A4, I think. No, 4C4. So, it wouldn't be allowed in the first 10 feet of the street landscape border. So can only have flowers there. So.
Right. Commissioner Zagier, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So the whole zoning thing. So can somebody apply for a special exemption to for whatever reason that they may have to get around the UDC code in this case?
So Commissioner Zagier, so I mean, technically they could potentially apply for a variance, but they would have a very hard time, in fact, probably impossible time, being able to meet the criteria and the findings and proving a hardship related to that.
Okay, well, I mean, it's not beyond the scope of someone wanting to do something like this, especially if it's the entrance to their development or their apartment that they're building or something like this. So I was just wondering, chances are you're going to say no because we are in a water crisis. We are in the desert, correct? Just for that simple fact alone. Thank you.
Just to comment quickly on that. I think we are still in the public hearing. So we don't want to interject too much here because there may be other speakers, but as Dan mentioned, for a variance, those are an applicant would need to apply for a variance and make a case for why they need to vary the zoning ordinance because of some sort of unique condition on the site or hardship. So it's usually to allow something, a use that's not permitted, something like that, or change setbacks, etc. There could be a situation, we can never close off that possibility, someone could apply for a variance, but as Dan mentioned, this really hasn't been used. The current OASIS provision that allows grass is not frequently used today.
Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak? All right, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McKenzie. All of those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, the public hearing is closed. If there's any further discussion by the commission, we can go ahead and do that. Do any commission members have any additional discussion items that they want to bring up at this time?
I'd like to make a motion. If Dan will put the text back up. Thank you. So I'd like to recommend approval of the prohibition of ornamental turf UDC amendment to mayor and council with clarifying language in 7.6.4 D1D to change the language to say grass areas installed closer than 10 feet to a street or in front of entryways to residential neighborhoods or subdivisions unless associated with recreational amenities. The second change is to add for ornamental turf after criteria in number D3, just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for that motion, Commissioner Martin. One question though, just to be clear on the motion, I think you said D1D, I believe it's D2D, the first.
I'm sorry,
the
D2D,
first change that you said. Okay, so your motion includes that change to D2D.
correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Kinney. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. A favorable recommendation of the prohibition of ornamental turf UDC amendment from the Planning Commission will be sent to the mayor and council. We'll move on to agenda item number 5. Would staff please provide any PDSD updates to the commission?
Yes, Chair, I'll provide a couple quick updates. One, I want to let the commission know that our development code streamlining package, which the commission reviewed in February and made a positive recommendation on to mayor and council, that was adopted by mayor and council on March 21st with the planning commission recommendations. That will go into effect, I believe either tomorrow or Friday is the 30-day mark. So wanted to let you know the results of that code amendment that you all deliberated on earlier this year. Also last month, mayor and council adopted a climate action and adaptation plan. This is a wide-ranging plan that includes strategies around land use, transportation. So I wanted to mention that if commissioners were interested in taking a look, it also includes strategies around energy, zero waste, and heat resilience, a number of different aspects that will drive a lot of the city's work and long-range planning efforts over the next several years. And then lastly, on Plan Tucson, our general plan update, which we've been keeping the commission up to date on. We just finished our series of community workshops. We held 6 community workshops, both in person and virtually around the city. And we currently have a survey open. That's also a way that we're collecting input. That's open for another week, I believe. I think it closes at the end of April, that survey. And we are about to launch our working groups. We're going to have 5 working groups focused on different topics, which is a way for community members and stakeholders to help us develop policy updates in the general plan. And that's it for PDSD updates.
Thank you for that. Agenda item number 6 is future agenda items. Would staff please provide the commission with a preview of the upcoming future agenda items?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
So we got invited to the meet and greet on Friday. Is there any potential issue with quorum? Having a quorum at the meeting on Friday?
I will check. That's a great point, Commissioner Martin. I'll alert the clerk's office.
I know other committees have notified, have put out notifications that there may be a quorum at an event that is not a commission meeting. So thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
You mentioned the climate action and adaptation plan. Is that just found on the city website?
Yeah, I'll post a link in the chat, and actually we can email it out to the planning commission members. Thanks, Dan. And something we will schedule some point in the next few months is perhaps an informational presentation on the climate action adaptation plan for the commission, similar to what we did on Move Tucson and our housing affordability plan in the past year. So we'll try to get that on agenda sometime over the summer, perhaps.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving along to agenda item number 6. Any future agenda items, staff?
Yes, Chair Cassidy. So just nothing immediate right now, but we do have a couple things kind of coming up eventually. One is we are working on some amendments related to smoke shop regulations and food truck villages. And then as Corin had mentioned, some informational sessions, one related to the climate adaptation and action plan for you. We'll be bringing that to you. So thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item, number 7, is the call to the audience. At this time, I'd like to offer the public an opportunity to speak on any subject that is not listed on the current agenda as a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand or speak to let us know. All right, hearing no voices and seeing no hands, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Zagier. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McKenzie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, staff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.